Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. And we got Huck in the room with us. Yeah, that's a good girl. Executive producer trying to make sure I do all the right things. Make sure I do a good job for our friends and villagers. And Huck's a good girl. She's had some company lately. And yeah, you've been a good girl, huh? You're a good girl. Now she just went to sleep here, right next to the camera. But yeah, talk about a few things. First of all, it's a missing persons edition, and we've got a lot of things to talk about. First of all, over the last several days, I have been blessed by heaven that a friend, it's almost like a brother to me. I haven't known him for forever, but I met him through this work. And his family is from Canada. And I hadn't met the entire family. I met part of it. Angie and I met them a few months ago. And they came down for a vacation. And the last few days they've been with us. We've been hanging out with them, going places, doing things. And the guy's brilliant. I mean, I feel like a peon next to him. Super smart man. I love being around these people. One of the things I learned, that in Canada, the communication, the news that Canadians hear really only comes from governmental sources. And it's almost like they're getting only information the government wants them to hear. It sounds like China and Russia. And he told me that it's been this way for a number of years. And it's kind of scary. Well, we talked about all kinds of things for time together. And this is one of those few times where I've been around younger people in his family, say 18 to 29, that were just sharp as a tack on what's happening in the world. It was riveting to sit around and talk about just daily events. Angie and I went to bed at night and we're saying, there's hope. There's hope for our world, because these people were so smart and their kids were so brilliant. And wow, blown away. I could sit and talk to him and his kids for hours, and his wife, and got tears in our eyes when we left him last night, trying to convince him to move up here or down here from where he is. And I hope he does. He's a really good man who's way smarter than me and done a brilliant job with his family. And it was a gift from God to meet him and his clan. Wow. Thank you guys for being here. And then every once in a while I get something and I gotta stand up for it, and I gotta say, come on people, buy this product. Now, I'm not paid 1 cent for this, not 1 cent. But I got this letter with this item. It said, Mr. Paulides, please accept this gift from one retired cop to another. This fine elixir is the distilled in Lebanon, Oregon by 3 Lynn County Sheriff's deputies. Andy is a patrol deputy, Dave is a retired patrol sergeant, and Tim is a retired sheriff. The best sheriff our county ever had. The story of the Blue Line brand is included on the label. A presentation box is a little bonus. I hope your taste buds find it as enjoyable as mine does. We are very much looking forward to the Alaska Bigfoot cruise. Yeah. I have a list of questions saved on my phone on a variety of topics that I'd very much like to discuss with you. I was planning on booking at least one of the fishing trips with you, but I waited and they filled up. Thank you for all your work and making so much information available. Respectfully. So, what they did is they sent this box with a retired department's logo, blue flag for support the blue police and sheriffs, and the stuff is called Blue Line, unapologetic American whiskey. What it says is it represents valor, sacrifice, integrity, bravery, and oftentimes heartache. It represents dedicated men and women of all races who often give their lives to protect someone they've never met. It represents an unshakable bond of honorable men and women who stand between good and evil. The owners of Hideaway Distillery have stood that line and are committed to those who have as well, both past and present. A portion of the sale of Blue Line Unapologetic American Whiskey will be donated to nonprofit organizations that provide support to law enforcement families, military veterans, and first responders. And you can find this at hideawaydistillery.com. United we stand. Awesome stuff. Thanks, guys. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the cruise. Like I said, not compensated one penny for this. When people do good things for me, I'll do good things for them. This is their handout. Now, for tonight's missing people. First case. How many people read this book? Missing 411, A Sobering Coincidence. This is about a series of disappearances that are all related to water. Now, on the back of the book, put a little map up here of the cases involved that are in the book. If you notice, there's a lot up here in northeastern U.S., and there's a lot around the Great Lakes. Some up in Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois. Very unusual locations. More Great Lake cases. All involve water, which is the most unusual part of all of this. And why I wrote one book that specifically addresses it. And I was very, very cautious about it. Oh, Huck. You just woke up the whole crowd. I appreciate it. Did that scare you? Did that scare you? Did you hear somebody coming around? Yeah, come on. Come over here. It's okay. It's okay. I know you're a good girl. Yeah, you keep those bad guys out. Yeah. So, sorry about that. But Huck is our guard dog, and when bad guys come around, when anybody comes around, that's what you get. Yeah, I know, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, okay, I'll let you out. She's gonna go get him now. Okay, you go get him. Go get mommy. Go. Oh yeah, there we go. Very cautious about the cases I put in here. Now, a series of you sent me this case that we're going to talk about. It's going to be an educational session. The case involves a very young man, 20 years old, that disappeared and while he was drinking. His name was Cristian Martinez, 20 years old. Went missing April 15th, 2023 at 12:56 a.m. And he was in Iowa City, Iowa. First of all, there aren't a ton of cases in Iowa. But the cases that are there, many of them fall just in line with what I'm going to tell you. Now, he lived in Muscatine, Iowa, but he was born in Iowa City. He was an outstanding soccer player, and he played for the Blackhawk Braves and the Muscatine Muskies. He was passionate about weight training and working out at the gym. And he rarely went out at night. On the night in question, which was April 15th, Cristian went drinking with some buddies. And then late that night, he got into an argument with some friends, pretty severe one. And they split up. Point of separation. Now, before I go any further, this is Lake Michigan. Tons of disappearances around here, especially around here. And this is Iowa. This is the Iowa City where the incident happened. And then these are the number of disappearances in that area. This is a cluster zone right here for sure. So at 12:56 a.m. he disappears at a place called Bardo, Iowa. It's the name of a bar, I think. He was in the alley arguing with a buddy. They separated, went their own ways. That's the last time he was seen. On April 16th at about 10 o'clock, another friend of his calls him and nobody answers. They get concerned. They go to his house. He's not there. And they contact the local police. Well, they start backtracking. They start contacting friends, and they hear the explanation that he got into an argument. They got separated. Very common in these cases. It's as though something happens to cause the separation. Well, the police immediately think, well, he's in the river. Wow, that fast. That's what the determination was. He's in the river. Now, this is the Iowa City. This is the river that flows through the city right here. And this is where he disappears. Now, this is the Iowa River. It's not huge, but it's pretty big. Well, the police decide that they're going to drone the river, go up and down it. They're going to walk the river, and then they're going to put boats on the river, which they do for several days in a row. There was no indication he went in the river. There was nobody saw him disappear. Nobody saw him go in the river, and nobody saw any marks on the river bank. After a few days, the police started to slow down their response, and the family decided to push on and get more searchers and start combing the city, which they did. Put posters up. It was a huge effort by the family. 7 days after the disappearance, April 22nd, 2023, some people were at a public park at 2501 South Gilbert Street in Iowa City, and they see a body in the water. And they call the sheriff. Johnson County Sheriff responds along with Iowa City Police, and they turn the body over to the coroner. The coroner confirms that the body is of Cristian Martinez. Now here's the perplexing part to me. As of June 29th, 2023, 2.5 months after he disappears, the coroner hasn't released the cause of death. That's very odd. Now, unknown causes of death are very, very common in missing 411 sobering coincidence. So Cristian disappears at the Bardo, Iowa, which is just about 6 blocks from the Iowa River, And he's found in the Iowa River, south of the point where he was last seen, near a place called Sand Prairie. Now, interesting points to me, the University of Iowa is right here, right near where he disappeared. And almost all of the missing cases that I talk about in my book are related to people in college and universities. Now, he wasn't going to college or university, but he was sure hanging around all of the people that do. Many people contacted me about this case. Here's the education part. And I want you to think about this the next time you see a case that has similar circumstances to this. Number 1, cause of death. That's all inclusive. That says everything about a case. If the coroner says, yeah, he died of a shotgun blast to the head, or there's a bullet in his head, well, it's not a missing 411 case. If he died from a fractured skull, well, then we got to understand why. Did he fall down an embankment into the river, fractured his skull, went unconscious and died? That's understandable. Did he get in a fight with somebody? Does he have multiple bruising and contusions with a fight? And then was he thrown in the river? These are all very important and lead to the classification in our terms of whether it's a missing 411 case. And then the coroner can add much to this. Many times in the cases I've written about in that book, the time of death listed by the coroner doesn't match with the time the person was last seen. In Cristian's case, he was last seen at 12:56 in the morning on April 15th. Well, if they put the the date of death on April 18th, well, then we want to know, where was he for 3 days? Right? Was he abducted and then dumped in the river? Another important factor, what was in his stomach? Why is that important, Dave? Well, let's say Cristian was out with some friends and they ate dinner the night before he disappeared. The contents of the stomach, if he died early the next morning, would still be there. And that would say that he died at a certain time, and that could be related to what's in the stomach, validated by friends. Was there a lot of alcohol in his system? Was he drunk? Was he drunk to the point of being unconscious? This all leads to different conclusions. And then lastly, what type of drug or alcohol was in Cristian's system? In the book, I made a distinct, important correlation to GHB. Coroners, when they do a screening for drug and alcohol, they do 23 standard drugs for screening. GHB isn't one of them. But I wrote about a series of cases in the books where parents got upset at the coroner's autopsy. They didn't think it was complete. They had an autopsy done themselves, and they screened 100 drugs, and they continually found GHB in dead bodies. Well, how did the GHB get there? Well, GHB is made in minute quantities in your body. Now, GHB has been called the date rape drug. But in all of the instances that I cited, the people weren't in a position to have somebody load up their drink with a date rape drug. And there's never an explanation how it got in their system. And these are just not major quantities. These are massive quantities of GHB. Now, in this case also, Cristian's family was highly religious. I know a lot of you draw religious connotations to the missing people. And then lastly, there was a peculiar entry in one of the articles, and it talked about his friends saying 2 weeks earlier, Cristian was out with his friends drinking. And got into an argument, separated, and somehow or another he fell into water. He made it out of the water, he got home, he sobered up, and he was fine. Nobody said where he fell into the water or the circumstances of being in the water. Very interesting specifics. Now, I can't classify this as a missing 411 case for the reasons I just gave you. I don't even know the cause of death, right? So before you recommend a case, we need to know that criteria I just laid out for you. Cause of death, date of death, time of death, it's in the stomach. Those are all those important things that we absolutely would like to have, although many times we don't. But the cause of death is critically important. I don't know if the Johnson County coroner will be releasing the cause of death on Cristian. A lot of times I've found that the coroners, when they can't determine a cause of death, they're embarrassed and they won't say anything to the public. Maybe to the family they would, but not the public. Now, the next case. We have 2 cases tonight. This is a case that nobody's ever heard about. It's a case we found in our own research. Nobody's ever talked about it. But it's a humdinger. It's quite, it'll boggle your mind. A little boy named Daniel Lee Moss, 2 years old, went missing January 7th, 1962, about 7 p.m. at night. Still daylight out. 22 inches tall, blonde hair, about 27 pounds. He lived in Waller, Illinois, with his mom, Mr. and Mrs. Richard Moss. Now, they recently moved to Illinois from Muskegon, Michigan. And Mrs. Moss and their 3 kids took a short vacation to see friends in Muskegon. And they were visiting the Bradleys and their 9 kids. With me so far? So, on July 7th, Mrs. Moss and Mrs. Bradley took the kids about 40 miles from Muskegon to a place called the Vida Weaver Park in Hesperia, Michigan, in Navajo County, side of Hesperia. Population of the city about 950 people. It's about 20 miles east of Lake Michigan, in a hotbed of missing people activity. Really a hotbed, folks. When I heard about this case, I thought, oh my gosh. Now, Vida Weaver Park sits on the south side of the White River, a slow-moving, shallow river in July. Now, this is Daniel Lee Moss, 2 years old. Last seen July 7th, 1962, about 7 p.m. So, this is where Hesperia, Michigan is. This is Lake Michigan. This is Holland, Michigan. This area here is where I've written about many, many disappearances. Many, many disappearances. Many, many disappearances. Now, Vida Weaver Park in Hesperia on the south side of the river. This area, woods, farms, thick woods, not much there. But the park was really pretty, and that's why the families decided to go there. So they bring 3 kids from one family, 9 kids from the other, and they all go out and they're playing in the park. Late in the day, sometime around 6 o'clock, one of the kids on the Bradley side of the fence cuts their foot on a glass. It's one of the girls. And Mrs. Moss helped bandage the foot with the mom. Well, that distraction meant that nobody was watching Daniel, 2 years old, for a short period of time, very short. So as soon as the foot was bandaged, mom starts looking for him along with the other kids. Pretty soon the entire park stops and they're looking for Daniel. At 8 o'clock they can't find him, and they call the Michigan State Police. I gotta say, I have researched thousands of missing persons cases. This is one of the best responses I've ever seen by an agency in a rural area. 8 p.m., the Michigan State Police are called. 10 p.m., the Michigan State Police have divers on scene, and they're searching the river. And the river is described as shallow, with just a few deep holes, slow moving for July. So the divers didn't have a lot to search, but they were on it immediately. The next day, July 8th, the state police had contacted other organizations, and they had 300 searchers on scene. They were working 16-hour days, and the state police was focusing on the river. Now, they had searchers out in the fields and things too, but they're focusing on the river. July 9th, 400 searchers. So the state police requested an airplane from the Coast Guard. They got it. They requested a helicopter from their own agency. They got it. And the Coast Guard plane was searching downriver from the location where Daniel disappeared. So the plane was searching fields downriver, looking for a body. A local sawmill nearby had a big pond. And they thought it was possible maybe Daniel went in the pond. They drained the pond. We're doing the right things, folks. July 10th. The state police holds a press conference, and their press relations officer stated, "We are not discounting anything." Interesting words. At that same time, they brought in more state police officers from throughout the state, and they started searching the neighborhoods and knocking on doors and searching houses and doing criminal history checks on people in that immediate area. The exact same thing you should be doing on every missing person search in a city. This wasn't a big city, folks. 950 people. This park was in a fairly rural area. Well, near the end of July 10th, one of the police officers on scene stated that they were moving towards the theory of, their words, abduction. And that's the way these searches always go when they start to search and they aren't getting results. Always goes that way. July 11th. They had road crews build dams along the river. And every hole in that river that was at all deep was checked again by divers. And they strung nets across the river at different locations. They held another police press conference at the end of the day, and a reporter asked one of the search and rescue coordinators, "What do you think happened?" The response from the search coordinator stated, "We don't know what to think any longer." I gotta say, that's quite a statement from a search and rescue organizer. I like the honesty. I like the straightforwardness. But it shows how lost they were. They had searched the river with divers multiple times. They had put up nets. They put up planes and helicopters. It's a shallow river, slow moving in July. Not much going on. What's going on? They had no clue. July 12th, search teams were reduced in size for the first time. July 13th, they were reduced again to 50 people on scene, all on 16-hour days, and there were 4 canine teams continually on site looking for any scent trail, which they found none. July 14th, search and rescue perimeter was pushed to a 5-mile radius, almost 2.5 times the normal search radius for a 2-year-old boy. And that 5-mile radius search, we're finding nothing. July 16th, 2 more days. The state police met with the parents. They met with other search organizers, met with the Coast Guard, met with the sheriff. And it was a cumulative decision to terminate the search. And an interesting twist that I was stunned to see. The state police announced at that time that they were assigning 3 detectives to the case. 3 detectives to the case. I've never heard that before. To me, that indicated they weren't thinking he was in that river. They were thinking something else happened, but they hadn't had a clue, and they don't have a clue. They were obviously thinking abduction. The last thing they said is, the last few days of the search, they had gone 31 miles downstream. One of the state police coordinators was asked, again, what do you think happened? And they said, this is what they said, the boy is either in the river or something else happened. I've never heard those words before. Something else happened. Pretty peculiar words. Something else. What does that mean? There was nothing on the case until September 1st, 1962. State police were contacted by a reporter just asking for an update on what's going on with the Daniel Lee Moss case. And the state police sergeant of detectives stated that every inch of the area where Daniel was last seen was searched multiple times. They found nothing. Said there was no footprints or tracks anywhere near the river that they could find. The amount of time that the mother was not watching her son was minutes, not hours. There was such a brief point of time for something to happen. They weren't sure what to think. But they did say that there were some police officers who believed he was still in the river. And other police officers had no idea because there's no evidence he was in the river and there's no evidence anybody took him. The horrific nature of this to the Moss family, to the Bradley family, was life-altering. Daniel's brother and sister were at the park when he disappeared. Why weren't they taken? Why weren't one of the 9 Bradley kids taken? Why was Daniel the one that disappeared? I went way into history trying to find any update or anything on this case. Nothing. Meaning they found nothing. It's a cold case. But you have to look at the actions of the state police that have the jurisdiction on this case. The actions being they assigned 3 detectives to this. Meaning they felt something else happened and the boy didn't drown. So, lots of specifics about that case that fit the 411 profile, point of separation. It's at that time where the Bradley daughter cuts her foot and everyone's distracted. Nobody's watching Daniel. Happened right next to water. Happened in a cluster zone. Bring in canines, can't pick up a scent. No tracks. Where did he go? Well, friends, those stories take it out of me. I say kids just take it out of me because in my heart I can only imagine what Daniel's parents thought. Driving away, thinking, my boy, I'm leaving my boy. Well, our world is a strange place. And the more you know, the stranger it gets. So I thank you for being here. Please make sure you're a subscriber to our channel. Make sure you give a thumbs up if you like the video. And share the video on your social media. It would help us greatly. Be nice to the people in your community. Smiling doesn't cost anything. We need to be a friendlier, gentler group. And be safe. Love your family. Paulides out.